Welcome back into A to Z here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Just now 3 days away from the NFL draft. And of course, we have no idea what the Atlanta Falcons are going to do. Joining us now from Locked On Falcons podcast, Aaron Freeman joins us right here on A to Z. Aaron, welcome. Good to see you, brother. I am glad to be back with you as I hit the right button here and welcome you in. There we go. Welcome in, brother. Good to see you, man. So we are 3 days away here, and I don't know that we're any closer whatsoever to figuring out what the Falcons are going to do. I guess I just have one simple request here, and that is, can we just please get the obvious, easy thing to happen for the Falcons just once? Like, just once. Is that too much to ask?
No, I mean, this is how the Falcons roll. They have to make things complicated. They have to make things difficult. I last night I broke down, I thought 5 players that the Falcons could take at pick number 8. None of them were wide receivers. And so I wake up this morning with all the various NFL insiders saying the Falcons are going to take a wide receiver at 8. So you never know what's going to happen with this football team.
I mean, look, I've said this for the last week, and I don't think the last time you and I got together, I said it to you, but like at this point, my puke factor for the Falcons taking a wide receiver is 0. Right? It's the smallest thing. Like, there's not a wide receiver out there that's going to make me go, okay, I'm okay with. I don't care. It's just, it seems so derelict in Terry Fontenot's duties to draft a wide receiver at this point. It's not even about other needs and other holes. I'm simply asking, how does that wide receiver make you better? Not even this year, next year. You've got to figure out other things first. How to get the quarterback, how to run the ball, how to protect the quarterback, how to stop the run. Like, at what point in time does essentially another wideout for 2 years in a row not scream you're the Detroit Lions?
Yeah, it's the same questions I have, Mark. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Like, obviously, at some point, you're going to need weapons for whoever that quarterback is going to be to throw to, but that's not the time frame. That's not the period of time in this rebuild that the Falcons are in currently. They are in where they just need the basics: the offensive line, the defense, the quarterback. They just need to establish that foundation, and then after that point, then they can go get that wide receiver once they've established that they've checked all those other boxes.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I got a good relationship with Thomas Dimitroff. I always supported him. I thought he was a great GM, and I certainly am not going to rail on his regime because, on the whole, in the macro, and I talked about this last week, they were really successful, all things considered. Aside from that, what I'm saying now for this new regime is, don't make the same mistakes the last one made. Don't do the same things that the reason you're here and the reason the last regime got let go was because the same things they kept doing clearly weren't making an impact enough a difference. Don't take a wide receiver because it's such a previous regime kind of thing to do. Like, it says we've learned nothing. Last regime was bad in the trenches. Why doesn't this regime be good in the trenches? Like, start there.
Yeah, absolutely. You go back to when Thomas Dimitroff came up with the idea of having that sort of 1A, 1B, number 1 wide receiver with Roddy White and Julio Jones. The Falcons had their quarterback. They had a pretty good offensive line. They had a really good run game. They had a defense. They were the number 1 seed the previous year. They were 13-3 that year, and they decided, hey, this wide receiver in Julio Jones, let's trade it all because he's going to be the thing that's going to put this team over the top. And he was almost correct in that assessment because they went to the NFC Championship game a couple of years later. And, as people often say, they were 10 yards away from the Super Bowl. But the lesson there is you don't get the wide receiver before you have all those things established. If you have those things established, then you can go get the wide receiver to put you over the top. You look at a team like Buffalo with Josh Allen. They went out and got Stephon Diggs once they had already established themselves as a sort of second round of the playoff sort of team, and that was their ceiling. Then they went out and got a big time wide receiver that helped put them in Super Bowl contention. And I think that's the way that you build it. You build the foundation, the quarterback, the offensive line, the defense first, and then you go get the wide receiver. And it feels like that's what the Falcons should be doing with this 8th overall selection. You can get a wide receiver later in the draft. Obviously, it's a big need for the team, but it just baffles me for the Falcons to kind of neglect some core areas of their roster, and a wide receiver is just simply not going to help them be able to run the football. It's not going to protect their quarterback. It's not going to stop opposing teams from putting points on the board. What it will do is in the fourth quarter, when the Falcons are down 2 or 3 scores, they'll be able to pad their stats a little bit and make things interesting, a la the Blake Bortles-led Jacksonville Jaguars. But that's about the best case scenario for taking a wide receiver at 8.
Oh man, I'm sorry I didn't mean to chuckle at that, but it just it brought back a lot of fond memories. Okay, I know my reasons and the way I make the case for them taking a quarterback. I want you to make the case for them taking a quarterback.
Well, you I think the main case is that you need to energize his fan base. No one's going to the games. No one feels like this team right now is worth going to the games. We know this is a rebuild year, that we know this is going to be a rough year. And if you give the fans a quarterback that they can glom onto, someone like a Malik Willis, who's an exciting football player on the field, it will give people reasons to go to the stadium this season to endure probably 17 games of pretty rough football. And that will be a thing where people can sit there and say, hey, this guy's got a bright future ahead of us. Probably going to be a rough rookie season, but once we get that cap space, once we put weapons around him, that will be something to build upon for the future. So I think that's the main justification for taking quarterback, not because you're going to put him in a situation that is going to be conducive to his success, but just simply you want to check that box right away and get some energy back into this fan base.
Aaron, do you buy the premise that it's okay for the Falcons to trade back and take a quarterback at 18 or 20, but it's not okay for them to do it at 8?
I think you can better justify it if you trade back because you're getting an extra pick, probably on day 2 to address another need, rather than pulling the trigger at 8. Because I just when you're a team that professes the philosophy of best player available, you'd be hard pressed to convince me that a quarterback is one of the 8 best players in this draft class. Right? Certainly, it's a significant need. But you could convince me that a quarterback is maybe one of the 18 best players in this draft class. And so if you're building a draft board, and being loyal to that draft board, it could be easier to justify for me if you trade back into round 1 and take that quarterback a little bit later than necessarily, I think, reaching on that quarterback in the top 10 of the draft.
Aaron, so when the Falcons get on the board at 8, if they don't trade, the interesting part is that they have 3 teams in front of them with multiple picks. The Texans, the Jets, and the Giants all have multiple first-round picks. Those are teams that can throw the Falcons draft plans, so to speak, out of whack. Not their draft board, but every team in the top 10 is sitting there predicting how they think it's going to go and what may be available, what versus what, because you have a limited amount of time to pick up the phone and make some calls to figure out who would be a dance partner to make a trade with. That said, there's no way the Falcons are trading up to get a player, is there?
The quick answer is there's no way. I can't imagine that happening. So yeah, I can't see a scenario where they are willing to give up their premium draft capital to go get a player.
What if the trade includes not giving up draft capital, but somebody like Grady Jarrett? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, you trade up to 3 and give the Texans Grady Jarrett, and that's all Grady and a 5th round pick, whatever it may be, to move up 5 spots. And you can end up getting Kayvon Thibodeau right there. Like that kind of deal. I don't think that that's a bad deal for the Falcons. It's curious, but I don't know that it's a bad deal.
I mean, I guess it's plausible. I guess the question I have is, do you feel good enough about a defensive player in this draft class to give away your one proven good stud on the front line? And do you feel like that young player?
If somehow Travon Walker and Kayvon Thibodeau go 1 and 2 and Aiden Hutchinson is sitting there at 3, then yes, I could justify a trade up to 3. Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's ultimately the question you have to answer. Do you feel good enough about one of these defensive linemen to justify that trade?
Yes and no. Like I said, again, I think that there's a way to justify it. It's just, theoretically, that's Grady Jarrett netting you a 1st round pick, right? That's the same thing. That to me is the same thing. Now, again, if they're going to trade Grady, I would like them to get a 1st round pick next year because I think it's more valuable next year for them than this year to get 2 impact players in the 1st round next year when they actually can, start to really complete this roster. So I think it's better to get the 1st round pick next year, but you wouldn't, if you get one of those guys, if you get one of the top 3, right? Whether it's Aiden, Travon Walker, or Kayvon Thibodeau, I think you could justify it for those 3. I think one of those 3 justifies it for me. Beyond that, I think you could wait on Jermaine Johnson. Again, I'm not opposed to an offensive tackle in this draft. I would actually like it. It would signal to me a completely different philosophy about the organization if they were smart enough to take one of the left tackles if they're there at 8.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm a big fan of Ike Ekwonu from North Carolina State. I feel like he checks the boxes of what Arthur Smith, at least I believe Arthur Smith wants to build, which is a nasty physical run blocking team. He played in an outside zone scheme at North Carolina State that the Falcons offensive line coach Dwayne Ledford, sort of established there a couple of years ago. The Falcons hired an assistant coach recently that was an assistant there these last couple of years. Dwayne Ledford helped recruit Ike Ekwonu to NC State. So he checks a lot of the boxes I'm looking for, but it feels unlikely that given how many offensive line needy teams are picking ahead of the Falcons, that he's going to fall there to 8.
Yeah.
So, if there's an alternate
Could
scenario where you
Charles,
could trade up to get
I was
him.
going to say, could a guy like Charles Cross interest you?
I'm a big fan of Charles Cross. I guess my only concern about Charles Cross is I feel like his ideal situation is going to a team, where he's going to be the left tackle. I want him as a plug and play left tackle. And I feel like coming to Atlanta and forcing him to play like right tackle for 2 or 3 years that Jake Matthews is here is, I think he can do it, but like, it doesn't feel like the perfect synergy of a pick. I want him to come in day one, be my left tackle. And I feel like he'll be that guy for 10 years. And he won't necessarily do that in Atlanta because he might be stuck playing right tackle for 2 or 3 years before doing that.
Let me throw another name at you that Michael Rothstein and I bandied about from ESPN.com and From the Perch podcast. And this doesn't bother me at 8. Some people may think it's high, but I've also heard some people say that this individual may be the best individual player at their position by a considerable margin in this draft, and that's Kyle Hamilton. And his safety fits very well in Dean Peace's defense. He's a guy that can do all the things that Dean Peace wants him to do in that defense. So, would Kyle Hamilton bother you?
No, he would not. As you said, I think you can make a pretty easy case that he's one of the best players in this draft class. If you're strictly buying that best player available philosophy, he definitely fits that and checks that box. I think he brings a lot to the table as a defender. My only concern is I feel like if you're going to take a safety that high, you have to build your defense around that safety. I think Kyle Hamilton has the skill set that you can do that, and you can use him in a variety of ways. You can play him deep. You can play him in the box. You can use him as a linebacker in dime and nickel situations. So I think Dean Pease has the experience and knowledge to build their defense around him. But if the Falcons are just going to plug and play with him and treat him like a quote unquote normal safety, that to me feels like a little bit of a stretch. You can get a normal safety on day 2 of the draft that you can just sort of plug and play with as, just a piece that you fit into your defense. If you're taking Kyle Hamilton at 8, to me, you are making a firm commitment to this guy's going to be the centerpiece of our defense, and all the things that we do schematically are going to revolve around him. And I think, that makes a ton of sense given the skill set he has. But
work for the Ravens, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Not the same scenario by any stretch of the imagination. I know, by the way, while we're talking safeties, I said this last week when I saw the headline and the news came out, but I am not opposed to them taking a flyer on Old Thomas. He'll make the veteran minimum. Nobody's got any reason to take a chance on him. He doesn't have to be like a teacher to any of the young guys, but just going out there and playing. He fits what Dean Pease does physically. Clearly, Dean Pease likes the kind of safety that Earl Thomas is. I don't think he's the same player he was in Seattle, obviously. But again, from a pure need standpoint, I don't think he can get hurt. He's going to be cheap. He's not going to be anything that's going to cost you any money.
Yeah, I think the thing with Earl Thomas is, the last couple of stops he had, he was not necessarily loved in the locker room. And so that's the main thing that you want to get correct. If you're good with his locker room presence, and I don't want to sit here and say he's a bad guy or anything like that, but like we know in Baltimore it did not work because he was not a great fit there, and you do wonder. A lot of
strong personalities there in Baltimore.
Yeah, you do wonder if you can't make it work in Baltimore, are you going to necessarily make it work in Atlanta? That would be the one pause I give for that conversation.
All right, brother. Well, we got an interesting night on Thursday night. Make sure you guys tune into Locked On Falcons with the host right here, Aaron Freeman. Follow him on Twitter at FalcFans, FalcFans. Always great to talk to you, brother. Thanks for the time. Certainly appreciate it, man. And stay well. And, what's that? Keep calm and just wait till 8 pick, right? Wait till the 8th pick. That's all you need to do.
Okay. I look forward to complaining about the Falcons taking a wide receiver with you on Friday.
You'll hear it from me first. All right, Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons podcast. Appreciate it, brother. Take the time out, come back, and wrap things up with people who are way too wound up about the Atlanta Braves. That's next right here on A to Z on Locked On Sports Atlanta, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Search Locked On Sports ATL.